because athletes will so often obsess about missing days that they'll make comments again like, I'm so stressed out that I'm missing a session today and what it's going to do to my training. You know what? Take the day off. Which is like the absolute opposite of what they want to hear. And that might sound cruel, and that might sound like counterproductive, but it's actually, I think, good because in order to get athletes to wrap their brains around the fact that, hey, you shouldn't be stressed out about something that should bring you joy. This is a hobby. It's not a career.
What's happening, Coach Man?
Hey, dude, happy Thursday. For those of you listening and catching up, it's January 23rd, 2020, and welcome. Crushing Iron Podcast 341.
341. Crushing
Man,
Iron Podcast.
yeah, at some point it's going to seem like a whole lot. I mean, 341 seems like quite a bit, but at some point I think maybe when we hit 500, 4 digits, it'll seem like a whole lot, but I think the fact that as most of you probably know, if you're new, we produce this podcast twice a week, traditionally Monday and Thursday, but always twice a week, and have so for 3 years. So I think the fact that we kind of chip away twice a week and haven't missed that since we started probably hey, it's just more proof in the pudding that consistency and commitment add up in the long haul, and they don't. It takes small chunks at a time, try to improve each time, and then they add up. And then when they get there, you kind of don't know how you got here. And I have no idea how we got to 341.
No idea.
Yeah, I have zero idea. But hey, yeah, welcome. If it's your first time listening again, we appreciate it. We know there's a lot of triathlon related podcasts out there, so giving us your time, I know, is special. So we cover it all. We cover triathlon, we cover training, race recaps, race reviews, have the occasional guest on, but more oftentimes than not, Mike and I'm Coach Robbie, that's Mike, age group extraordinaire, single bachelor, and just outstanding in general person overall. But
Mhm.
we just try to have an open conversation, a dialogue that, as Mike so eloquently mentioned on the last podcast, we'd be having these conversations anyway, and have for the last 6 or 7 years of our friendship, and decided to turn it into a podcast, having no idea what it would turn into or would anyone even listen. But we're here, and we do it with no sponsors, no ads, and we do it in a format that as someone pointed out, I think, which is very well put in our closed Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group on Facebook, when we kind of reviewing and commenting on Monday's podcast, where we talked about a traditionally, I think, very sensitive subject, which is weight. She said you did a very good job without being too specific, and that's basically what we try to do. We try to be specifically vague, and not in terms of not in terms of the fact that we don't have our own opinions and what we don't think work best for us, but I think you and I both, and admittedly so, like I know I might not do a great job of this all the time, but when we try to discuss triathlon and life and how they intersect and training and how to get better, at triathlon and life, that's a huge thing for us is we want you to get better at both. And I think as I try to, I don't, again, I'm not always perfect at it by any means, but we try not to shove things down your throat, that there is only one way, and if we do that, we'll try to do better. But there are certain things that I think are important to keep you healthy, happy, and to have a sustainable triathlon career as a hobby, and also have it complement your life in a positive way. But I think we have to be careful as well, and this is one of the reasons why I have a disdain for some other podcasts, is that we have a fairly significant platform. And while we could rattle off the things that work best for us and that you have to do that, I think we have to be careful this day and age in the with the ability of people to have so much information at their fingertips, and oftentimes looking for a quote unquote answer, they want to take someone else's answer as their own, copy and paste it and apply it. And while a lot of it could be true and could be applicable to how you could get better, I think we always have to be careful that just because something works for Mike and I doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I think there are a lot of general outlines and structures to training and life and your programs and nutrition and how you should apply things to you. But the best we can do is just have an open conversation and give our experiences, and then hopefully you can just take something from that and apply it and make it your own. I mean, that's really, I think, the goal of what we've always tried to do with this podcast is give enough information and really just kind of thought provoke, be more of a thought provoking podcast where you dig and you do the work yourself and you figure out what works best for you. And I think that's hard, but I hope that's what we do on a daily basis with the podcast is hopefully make it a thought-provoking hour for you to where you can figure out things on your own, and then maybe do some soul searching, maybe do some searching in your training, and really ultimately just do whatever you need to do to be the best athlete and the best person and human that you can possibly be.
Right. Yeah. I don't think we don't claim to always be right, but we do claim to always be learning. I think that's a fair way to say it, right?
Yeah, that's as Mike would always do, sum up what I've said in 30 minutes and 30 seconds.
I mean,
Yeah, no,
hey,
it's
and
true. It's
a
true.
good person, an athlete, is someone who's trying to get better, and that's what
Yeah.
we try and do.
Yeah, it is. It is. We're always trying to get better, and yeah, it
Hey,
is. But go ahead.
no, I was going to say on this topic, actually, did you get the latest email from Stolberg and
I'm not on their
Magnus?
email list.
Okay, I got in there. It was interesting. It was the 7 ways to detect BS when reading pop science and self-help.
Oh yeah,
And
it's a
I
lot of
was,
it out there. Yeah, I don't have a lot of email. I'm not on like any email lists like that. I know you're a big like podcast YouTube guy. I don't listen to any other podcasts really. I don't even listen to
yeah,
ours. I just record it and go. It's not my thing. I have in the past, like I do infrequently on like longer road trips. I used to listen to podcasts a lot. I kind of pick through what I thought was kind of something that would not interest me, not only interest me, but make me kind of think myself. But recently, when I've done kind of longer car rides, I've just chose to like do music or nothing, and I feel like it's been just as good, if not better, just to kind of work through my own internal dialogue and think of things. And I've actually put like a little. I mean, I don't think this is probably the safest thing, but I don't do it like haphazardly. Is I've put a little like notepad next to my in like my middle console, whatever, in case I have like an idea or thought that I have while I'm driving, like with because you have distractions, but if you think about it, it's like it can be like the least distracting part of your day when you're driving because you have to be focused on the road and you only have your thoughts. You don't have like your phone or different people or work or kids or whatever. It's like you can actually have like some alone quiet time, which is actually really hard to come by these days. And so I'll just kind of make notes, but
voice notes, man.
yeah. I
I've
hear
written books
I
on the road to
do that.
Wisconsin.
I
There's
hear that.
several in
In
in my
the making,
notes, like
several in the draft folder.
18,000 pages in a note. Yeah. But no, that's an interesting point, I think. And I know we're going to move on to the topic here in a bit, but regarding podcasts and things like that, I used to be really in on a lot of podcasts, and I would spend a lot of time doing it. But I've kind of settled into one person who I'm not going to reveal yet, but because I'm not certain I want to endorse, but I've been listening. It's more of a Zen spirituality kind of thing,
Okay,
and
I'm gonna
it
get
it
behind that.
it sort of goes back to what you were just saying though, because it's like, where am I sitting in the big picture? And then let me figure out my own path based on the true um, person that I am, or the gut feelings that I have, rather than to go out and seek all kinds of different information. And I think in a way, that's sort of the way we go about it too. It's sort of like, yeah, I mean, to be an authority and always hand out solutions and things like that is kind of a, I don't know, it feels a little egotistical to me on some level or something. And I think while there are a lot of lessons that are concrete that we have learned and that we talk about all the time, that doesn't mean that we profess to know it all. And there's something to be said about kind of exploring situations based on even triathlon, but based on sort of who we are as human beings and things like that. And I think that's, I mean, for me, that's an important way to sort of clear your head and you make your own decisions.
Hmm.
Is always important.
Totally agree, and I'll be on pins and needles awaiting this podcast reveal that you're gonna have. Like you want to do like an online thing where you like a gender reveal and you reveal this like secret podcast that you listen to that you don't want to tell anybody about.
Well, I don't know. It may come out,
It
it
make all right. Well,
may just come out naturally, but
organically. That's how we like it anyway.
I can tell you
Um,
that he's super old school and he's not even alive.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, now you got me
Way
way
ahead of
wow.
his time.
Yeah, you obviously way ahead of his time. Oh my gosh. Speaking of ahead of its time, this isn't really a topic that's ahead of its time, but it has been I shot you this text a couple minutes for the podcast, and I feel like this is hopefully this will ring true with many of you. Obviously, it won't ring true with a lot of you, but it should ring true with a good portion. In that today's topic and what I really wanted to cover and kind of dive into was how our insecurities affect our training. And I bring this up because it's been it's a good time of year to cover it, I think, because it seems to be ever prevalent and brought up in discussion or email or training piece comments with the athletes that I work with. And again, they don't sum up the entirety of the triathlete population, but there's always something to a taking a poll within without taking a poll within like a general population of what's kind of on their mind. And it's like when they go out and ask people in the streets, they ask 100 people what's what about this, and that's kind of take their percentages. But it is there, and I find it fascinating. The more I've thought about it this morning, as I was kind of texting back and forth with another athlete, um, in not just how our insecurities affect our training, but how we kind of lose our way in this sport while we get into it, right? Or a lot of people get into it to become more confident, to grow, to learn something about themselves, and to figure things out and to push themselves. And all those things can be uncomfortable, but what you hope they do is give you more confidence, gain more confidence. You go through struggles and you grow. Like that's kind of another branch off of this topic of our insecurities affecting our training, but it's also like it's most triathletes' obsession with wanting to know and predict everything. Like I had a text from an athlete this morning that was like, "Hey, do you think I'll be ready for this race in April or May?" And this athlete's coming off like a broken toe, and this race is a 50K. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if you're gonna be ready. Like what? Like I just find it fascinating, the mentality, the mental and emotional direction that athletes go, that can seem so confident and so motivated and concrete and just solid to so many people because of what they can do physically, but how we can so many times let triathlon or endurance sports in general actually just continue to manifest our insecurities and our lack of confidence, because all we've done is just add something else to our plate that we now need to judge ourselves by. And
Mhm.
the conversation I had with this athlete was more so like, listen, like I have no idea if you're going to be, quote unquote ready, because in my definition, like what do you consider ready? It's a very relative term.
Well, I say
And
yes.
right, it's like, yeah, do I think we're ready? I don't know. And I know people hate to hear that. It's like, oh, coaches should have all the answers, but the fact is, I don't know. Like, you do realize that you can't predict half as much as athletes want to be able to predict. And the part that I find again like really interesting is how much we want to, like, if you've got, like, we've all gone through life and we've all had trials and tribulations and obstacles we've overcome and bad days and bad things that have happened, and that's where we grow, and that's how we become who we are. And that's, I think, most people, depending on what they've gone through and what age are, they would look back and think, yeah, like I wouldn't be who I am without all these difficult things happening to me. I mean, I know that's for me for sure. I wouldn't be a tenth of what I am today without having gone through what I've gone through. And I don't look back and think, you know what, it was all those really good days. It really, really shaped me into the man I am today to be able to do the things I need to do and the things I want to do. No, it was the hard things. And then how many times as athletes, as we have this opportunity within a sport that challenges us, and there's so many things that are unknown, and there's so many opportunities to struggle and to have obstacles and to challenge ourselves in new ways, that should be a positive, that we always are obsessed with finding and knowing exact things. Like I find it uh, I don't say frustrating isn't the right word, but I think that when we get into the sport, we do it again, like so many other reasons, we get into feel better about ourselves, and then we end up kind of negating that by being too hard on ourselves and not living up to standards. And so I'll just read through like a couple different like quotes that I always hear or comments I always hear from athletes, or you can probably see online, that are just examples of how our insecurities affect our training. And one is the, a very I got this one earlier this morning too. Do you think this race is a good idea? And that's like for a race in August. The other one is, do you think I'll be ready? I cover that one. The other one is not every athlete's, but most athletes' insecurity and how they manifest it to always having to do more or always having to make up sessions. If I don't get a PR, I'm getting slower. Or a lot of times when you begin working with athletes, even sometimes having worked with them for long periods of time, they still have that, was this session good enough? Or the worst one you ever want to hear, as if an athlete says, yeah, I was just worried I was going to let you down. And you, as a coach, like, it doesn't frustrate you, but it makes you want to work more towards getting that athlete to understand that this sport is so wonderful and fun for the many reasons that it is hard and that it is a struggle. And that's why people love it and can become like so uh, I don't say obsessed, but so immersed in what it can do for you, in that it is so challenging. In that if you are so obsessed with the perfection and predictions and always having a PR and always being, sunshines and rainbows, then you're not getting half of what you could be getting out of the sport. And there's a lot of pitfalls you can have in there as well, especially with athletes who always feel like they need to do more or need to make up things. And again, it's just most of us get in the sport for a lot of reasons. Could be weight loss, could be depression, anxiety, which is becoming like even more pronounced, I think, recently, especially just with people that I've talked to and how prevalent it is. But that this sport should alleviate that. It should alleviate or help alleviate some of the seriousness or severity of some of those symptoms, and you shouldn't be stressed out about it because that's making or maximizing a lot of those effects. So again, it's it's a huge topic and it could go a million different directions, but that is the direction I wanted to go today, and hopefully do our best to open up a topic to where people can do some, kind of self-discovery on themselves and think, remember, like, this sport is supposed to be hard. Like, I know a lot of podcasts want to make things seem easy, and that here are things to make it easier, here are things to make you faster, but it's not easy. It's hard, but that's also why it's so great. And I think not knowing what you're going to end up being is the best part. Because if you could know what you were going to be, or you could exactly know what your time was going to be, to me, that takes all of the fun and all of the growth and all the learning out of it. Because you already know, it's already over. It's already been predetermined. It's done. Where's the fun in that? Where's the fun in the challenge and the daily work and the process? So there's your word vomit, and you can take the chunks out.
Yeah, man, it's this sport is like an endless puzzle, really. And I've referenced my mother who loves to do puzzles, and they always seem to end, but this one just keeps going. And uh, it's always different to me. And you've referenced uh, some of my races before where you questioned me as to I kind of had a pretty solid goal in mind, or target, and I pretty much hit it. And then it was like, okay, are you selling yourself short? Are you just kind of like aiming at a target and then hitting it? But you're right. I mean, it was like sort of, it did in a way take, I don't know, it almost became like I was finishing a task versus growing and learning and trying to like just see where I could go rather than, and that's where it always comes back to time goals and why we talk about running without watches a lot and things like that, because like while it is an endless puzzle, we're human beings, we're kind of limitless, I guess, in a way where um it to me it's all about if if the sport is kind of become depressive. And I think that's like a weird thing because right when you get into it, you're jacked up and everything becomes a PR. And then all of a sudden, if you're not PR in every workout, you're dealing with a completely different challenge. As you stay in the sport longer, you get more comfortable with a lot of things. And that's a different sort of confidence. But the confidence struggle for me a lot of times becomes I guess maybe redefining your why or something. And there's it becomes an insecurity in a way because you're like, man, this isn't really like, for some reason, I can't figure out why I'm doing it all the time. And then that becomes stressful and that becomes like a bad thing, right? So if you tie it to numbers, if you tie everything to results, then that becomes a major problem, you know?
I think it all goes it a lot, well, not all of it, but I think a good portion of it, at least in some of the athletes that I come across, is there is this gigantic fear that you just don't know, and why that has become such a bad thing. I mean, and I get it. Like, we live in a world now that everyone can seem on the outside like they know everything. That they have all the answers, and that, they read a few lines in this article, and now they're fully, equipped to answer every single question you've ever read on climate change because they read this one article from the HuffPost, and now they're like, a professional. And people are afraid to say I don't know because it makes you seem weak, but one of the things that's so empowering, and I think so actually confident, when somebody says like, I don't know, and you're like, oh, so you have a very good grasp of the things you know and the things you don't know. To me, that makes you very, very smart. It makes you very powerful in your own way. And I think that, so like, when it comes to triathlon and into training, I don't. So look at it this way. If I said, Mike, yeah, man, according to, the calculations I'm doing right now, I think in 4 months, if you do all the work you're supposed to do, you're definitely going to be at a 446.
Mm.
Oh, okay. So now I just kind of have to do this, and I know exactly what I'm going to get. The thing is that and athletes do this a lot. They want you to make predictions in the present that, like, speaking for example, like this athlete this morning, hey, do you think this race is a good idea? It's this really, really long ultra race in August. And I was like, I don't know. Is it a good? There's so many different scenarios. It's like asking me what I want for dinner on August 18th at 5 p.m. Zero idea. I have a general idea what I probably will like, but I really don't have any idea until we get closer to time. And the reason I said this is because, well, you've been coming off some major injuries last year. So if you have no setbacks and no issues, then yeah, it's a good idea. I think you can do it. Now, if you have any setbacks between now and August or any niggles, then I think it's a terrible idea. So the answer is, I don't know. Or what so many people are also afraid to say, it depends. And I think, like, when you want to make predictions so far out of what someone's capable of, what's going to see, it's like, all I know is where we are today. And I think a lot of it goes back to, like, our inability to be so satisfied with today that we have to look 4 months down the road, because today just isn't good enough. I need to know more about what these other days are going to lead up to me being able to do way down the road. And like, like the athletes that I work with that are oftentimes the most successful within their own selves, and that's not like time and podiums and accomplishments. It's, are they kind of overconfident in the fact that they think they know too much, or are they really, really, really insecure? They kind of the both of the athletes on those end of the spectrums tend to not perform as well up to their own abilities. It's the ones that kind of hover in the middle that are like, you know what? I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to wake up every day and see what happens. And I'm not going to obsess about one day, whether it's great or whether it's bad. I'm not going to make conclusions that are I'm going to let influence the next 6 months based on one day, because it is just one day, whether it's a good result or a bad result. Like, you might have an athlete do like a really, really good bike workout, like, yeah, I think it's time to bump my FTP, baby. And then like 4 days later, they're like, oh my gosh, I crashed and burned. It's like, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. And I think, again, that is what can be so magical about the sport, and just endurance sports in general, is we commit to and we sign up for these really, really, really tough feats, distances, races, events, whatever, down the road, and you don't know. Especially when you're signing up for your very, very first one, you don't know how you're going to do or how you're going to be able to do it. You just there for a moment believe and think within yourself, I think I can do this. I don't know for 100% fact, because I don't know what the world's going to throw at me. I don't know what life's going to bring. I don't know how training's going to go. I don't know how my body's going to react. I don't know how I'm going to be motivated or I'm going to get sick, whatever it is. But in this moment, I have confidence that I can do this. You sign up for a race, it might be a year out, might be 6 months out, but in that moment you have confidence. But then so many athletes from every day forward after that, no matter what's happening in their training life, it's like, I don't know if I'm gonna be ready. You're right. You don't. But all you can do is wake up and say to yourself, I want to be ready. And I want to do whatever I can to be able to do the best I can be. And kind of going back to what you said about, I think I can run, like, I think we covered this, but like if you go back to all your Ironman run splits, they've basically been within like what, a couple minutes of each other ever since your very first one, like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, so going back to, like people who want to run like predictive paces, and you scroll through Training Peaks and you see somebody who, no matter what the terrain is or what the thing is, they're always running between 8:30 and 8:35. And you're like, all right, come on, something's got to give. Like your body isn't always the same every day, neither is a terrain. And I think that the more we get into this predictive, having to know thing, what feels like empowering you is actually robbing you of an opportunity to grow and robbing you of opportunities to be challenged. And I think that, again, like we've moved again, like in a society in every different way, from triathlon and training and racing, to we want to almost remove as many unknowns and challenges and obstacles as possible, but we just need to know everything and know exactly where we're headed. And I would gather to say, like most of us, I'm going to be 40 this year. You're going to be, 51 or something. And like if we looked back at where we predicted we would be or wanted to be or had to know we had to be in high school, dude, I'm way off. I mean, I couldn't be any farther any further off of where I quote unquote wanted to be or would have predicted I would be, or what I'm doing or the life I'm living or what I would have gone through. And the thing is having gone through so many hard things, and I'm not saying you have to go through hard things to enjoy and love life now. What I'm saying is like the 16, 17-year-old me that was in high school, that was you know, going to like a Christian private school and had very limited knowledge of the whole world around them, and had never drank and never smoked and was living this life, and applying to pre-architecture school in Auburn, and had like the whole two kids white picket fence saying like that's what I'm going to be, that's what I'm going to do. And then you fast forward whatever 20 23 24 years, and my life couldn't be any polar opposite of what not just I envisioned it would be or thought I wanted it to be, but also probably like, what your parents wanted to be. But dude, I can't imagine living a better life. And like, so I think if we look back at our own lives, and again, like not everyone I think is in a great place in their life, but if we look back at how we got to where we are and what we've got, what we've gotten out of the hard times in our life, that we wouldn't want to predict it. I know I've referenced this so many times on this podcast, but the one of the very first podcasts I ever listened to was Ryan Holiday's first interview on the Rich Roll podcast. Back when I was living in Kansas City, I was out on a run, and I remember it very very vividly. And he was like, they interviewed like uh, all these older people who were getting close in their life, and they asked them what the best things in life that happened to them, and they almost all unanimously commented and referenced a very bad and difficult event, because that is what made them who they were as they were having their last days. And it wasn't like, oh, it was this really great sales month that I had back in 2000, whatever. It was like it was the hard times. And I know that that's hard to wrap your brain around, especially if you're in it. But again, when it comes to triathlon, it comes to training, and it comes with the opportunities that we have every day. I find so much joy in the training that I'm doing now, and I've always kind of done the last 3 or 4 years, is just going out with the set of effort, and that is it. Knowing that what I have to give today is actually enough. And I kind of like the fact that I have no idea what it's going to add up to in the future, because in the past, going back to the person I was back when I was younger, if I could have tried to add up and predicted who I would have been now, I would have not just gone down a greatly different path, but I would have succeeded so less. And I'm not obviously some like giant successful person, but I would have like way like shorted myself on what I believe I was actually internally capable of. And I just think there's so many lessons we can take for that in our training when we just don't know, and actually how freeing that can be to just be in that part of the discovery to make ourselves more confident instead of driving our insecurities out and having them manifest in training. And is this good enough? Or I need to do more because that wasn't good enough. Then how that actually takes us away from who we're, like you were saying earlier about this ghost podcast you were listening to, about just becoming who you really are supposed to be. And that's what I think so many athletes are either unfamiliar with or haven't figured out yet, is that the best person you can possibly become is just to become it naturally and organically and be true to yourself, not predict and not force. And that is what actually brings security, not insecurity.
Hmm. Well, this comparison, right? Is that
Hmm.
where a lot of this stems from? Either comparing to other people or other things that you see, or comparing to what we thought we were going to be. And then if you get caught in that trap, then it can be dangerous, you know. And I think about how afraid I was of this sport when I began, and how difficult it was, and what I went through to get to, you know, the finish line of my first Ironman. And that certainly resonates with me as a major accomplishment. And then once you get through that, though, right? It's where's the new fear, I guess, is there the new tough? I mean, what redefining what can be difficult there is has been a challenge for me all along. And but then again, it's like really and it's almost cliche now, this idea of being in the moment and, you know, quote unquote, the power of now and all that sort of things. But that's all you have. I mean, it really is. I mean, cliches become cliches because they're true usually. And it's really interesting to revisit that concept all the time, because in order to look into August and decide if you think you're going to be ready for something at that time is just kind of fruitless. It's energy waster, and it can really dig a hole today. I mean, like what?
I think it's also our need, for whatever reason, to immediately judge and label ourselves successes or failures, or we're getting better or we're getting worse. We always have to label and assign a adjective or an adverb to what we are doing or what we are going through in the moment, and that is now attached to our identity, and that may or may not change tomorrow. And I think, like, and athletes do this in workouts all the time. I think I'm getting slower, coach. I just think I'm getting slower.
Mhm.
And you're like, so you had a bad workout today, but if you look at, I don't know, the last 2 months, they've all been outstanding. You don't just get slower overnight. That's like if you look at all professional sports, basically, guess what? The teams in the Super Bowl have all lost. And they weren't like, I don't know, man. Like, I think we're getting worse. We're going, like, you played a bad game and you lost. It doesn't mean you're getting worse. Are the things you might need to tune up and change? Is it fueling? Is it high? Is it recovery? Whatever it is, sure. But like assigning yourself to that it's so self-destructive when you talk to yourself that way. And like I'll oftentimes do this. This is probably giving away too much information to the athletes I work with, but sometimes I will assign a day off to and it might not have anything to do physically. It might just be assigning them a day to where they have to deal with and sit with themselves not working out. Because athletes will so often obsess about missing days that they'll make comments again like, I'm so stressed out that I'm missing a session today and what it's going to do to my training. You know what? Take the day off. Which is like the absolute opposite of what they want to hear. And that might sound cruel, and that might sound like counterproductive, but it's actually, I think, good, because in order to get athletes to wrap their brains around the fact that, hey, you shouldn't be stressed out about something that should bring you joy. This is a hobby. It's not a career. And that it should be adding things to your life, not taking away. We have enough stress in our lives, okay? Life is hard. Life, frankly, sometimes just sucks. But what triathlon and what training and endurance sports should give you is positive energy and take away stress. And if you associate missing or not accomplishing something in the day with an increased stress load, then I don't want to say your priorities are out of whack, but the way that you see things is probably is manifesting itself in a negative fashion. And so I'll just say, no, you're taking today off anyway, because I want you to work through with like the fact that it has to be okay for these things to happen in life to occur and for you to be able to take days off, because I will continue to assign you a day off, even if you want to hate me for it or think that I'm wrong, until you're able to do it yourself. Until you're able to show yourself some grace and come to an understanding that this is supposed to be a good thing, that this is supposed to be a positive thing, that there's an athlete that I was actually, two instances, like I was joking with earlier today, that this athlete texted me and was like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna take today off. I'm just gonna take today off, and I think it's a good idea. Um, I know it took today. Should I just move on?" I was like, "Wait a minute, who is this? You sound like an objective, mature triathlete. I'm not sure who this is right now." And she's like, sometimes it can be smart. I just want to take a while to get there. And I was like, but that's showing so much growth and maturity. Like, to me as a coach, like when I hear an athlete say, I chose to take the day off because I think I'm coming down with something, then standing ovation, tons of applause, because you're able to put your overall health in the future, which is tomorrow and the next week, into a higher priority than immediate fulfillment that's just going to submerge or push down any insecurity or bad feelings you might have for the day. You've actually looked at the big picture. And going back to what I was saying about taking the ability to take days off, or the ability to manage things in terms of the stress you have, is I have another athlete that is going through a very difficult time with the health of their wife, and I just made this comment. He was like, "I'm going to continue on training this week," and I said, "Just remember that right now there is so much stress in your life. The last thing you want to do is take on training and have it add stress. You need to approach every session with the effort level of, this is actually going to rejuvenate me. This is not going to deplete me." And you were one of the very first people that athletes that I work with that always says to me was, I really like to feel energized when I get done. Versus the opposite, which is now it's like, want to crush myself, baby. Like I'm on the floor puking. You're like, then that was a bad day.
Mhm.
And it's like life is so stressful already that, and that's again, like that's the reason why when coaches program, and I get a little flack sometimes too, probably, that sometimes athletes might think I'm a little too conservative with their training, but the thing about putting in a training plan and coaching athletes and looking at things day to day is that you put in training based around someone's life, not what they want to be athletically only in a vacuum. Because if you can't, because what most people I think fail to understand when they see training put in, like, oh, that's just too easy, man. I'm like, in a vacuum, if you were on vacation on an island by yourself and you were single and had no job and you had everything perfect, it might seem too easy. But now let me start to add a few things. Now let me start to add 45 to 50-hour weeks. Now let me start to add sick kids. Now let me start to add, busy basketball games on the weekend. Now let me add other stresses to life. Okay, how does it feel? Okay, I think it feels about right. Like, that's one of the biggest things that people have this misunderstanding about when it comes to training and load, is that you can't look at it singularly and just with this like tunnel vision of, is it enough? Because as a coach, when you apply training, you apply it in addition to the stress that they're going to have in every other aspect of their life. Like we talk about this a lot, like the three P's. It's physical stress, it's professional stress, and it's personal stress. They all add up and they all equate and act the same. And so you can't just take, all right, well, I'm going to take away what I foresee as all your stress points this week with everything physical. And you know what? Sorry, if you have professional stress and personal stress, it's just going to add on top. And that's what happens. People get overtrained, quote unquote overtrained. A lot of times it's just they're overlifed, and you haven't taken into account what your life is offering you and dealing with you and how it's dictating you should respond, and you're still just shoving yourself in a hole. And that's how you add training up. That's how you're progressive with it. That's how you're sustainable with it. Is you add things very, very incrementally. And when athletes get really, really insecure about it and they add, a couple extra intervals, they add 30 minutes, they add, another run here or there, they want to continuously add more and add more and add more because they have that insecurity. Well, when you talk about when you're always monitoring people on kind of the end of their what I would consider their kind of their global stress load is I gave this analogy the other day, and I said if I walked in tonight and I said, Mike, I want you to cook something for me very, very specific. I'm going to give you all the ingredients already set out and all the instructions. I'm going to have all done all the measurements and I'm going to have done it set out perfectly for you.
Okay.
And then I come back the next day to see what you had done, and you said, well, I added a little bit here, and even though you told me not to, I added a little bit here, a little bit here, just because I thought it might be better because I think we need a little bit more. My reaction would be, then how the hell are we going to know if it was good or not? Because you've added more, because your insecurity to add more. This was referencing an athlete who was finding the need to continue to add minutes and time onto each session, was that how are we going to know if the load is right or wrong if we continue to add things? And again, that goes back to where insecurities can go wrong in training is in as a coach when you throw in a plan and you always want to, in my opinion, you always kind of want to buffer on the side of less because you're giving wiggle room to what the most unpredictable thing in the world is, which is life. And if you don't leave that wiggle room for life, then you're going to be so overwhelmed and so overstressed. And then that's going to make you respond to your training differently and become stressed with your training and insecure with your training. Because for most of us, when we look at training, we think this is our release. This is our alone time. Like this is the time I just get to be me, and this is the one thing I can control. And then when life, again, sometimes obviously you can't combat and still train with life is too much. But when life kind of moves training away and says, no, you don't have time for that today, then you feel like you're losing control. And I think, again, like that goes back to our insecurities and how difficult it is to manage those and how we need to like set, steps or I'm at a loss of word here, but we need to put in place, situations or, instruments or whatever it is that can prevent us from those pitfalls, or when we find ourselves maybe doing too much or overstressing or insecure, we need to have somebody to kind of slap us across the face and be like, okay, dude, first of all, it's a workout. That's it.
Hmm.
It's not, and you need to be, maybe just a walk is good today, but also maybe just, chilling on the couch for an hour and a half watching the new Aaron Hernandez documentary on Netflix. Maybe that's what's good for you.
Yeah, I don't know about that, man.
Oh, I don't know. I've been watching it. It's kind of intense.
No, I did watch it. Yeah, it's pretty intense. Now, well, I appreciate you mentioning about me because I've always been, married to this training by feel situation, and I mean, I've always just sort of had this philosophy that for me, training, I train to heal or to be more whole, or whatever that is, and early on, and I think there's something to be said. I think we have to stretch ourselves at times and see how far we can go, right? I mean, that's part of this too, is building up, especially if you're training for long distance triathlon and you've never done it. You kind of want to know what that ceiling is, what that limit is, or how far you can go. And I certainly did that early on, often. And I think the key is, and you're talking about checks and balances or something like that, but just being aware of it. I think a big part of it for me was always writing about it, and I remembered it easier. And there's these things, these feelings you get, when you're pushing it. I used to talk to you all the time. My first year of this training, I would tell you a lot that like, all right, I had a really good swim and I left on top. I did not go an extra 500 and leave there shelled. I would like,
Hmm.
you know, maybe that's going 2,300 versus 3,000 or something like that because I knew I was at a point where there was going to be a law of diminishing returns on me. And, I know you got to push yourself and it's important to build your endurance and strength like that. But for me, it was always about the bigger picture, which was if I continue to beat myself down and push myself past that limit of today, tomorrow's going to suck and the next day probably suck worse. And then it just becomes like, what's the point? I mean, because if you're constantly having to, and I believe this is a confidence issue too. And the insecurities of this podcast, that's the whole thing is, right? Is like, okay, do I really need to run 2 extra miles 6 months away from my race? Because I'm
Yep.
afraid that 6 months from now this is going to matter. I mean, those are questions that we have to really look at when we're
Well,
training.
I mean, you brought up such a great point in that, you yes, do you need to be pushed to, a specific limit every once in a while? Sure, but that limit doesn't need to be lying on the floor puking. It's like, if you want to give
If
an
it is, it
analogy.
can be once. You know what I mean?
Right,
When
yeah,
it's like, okay,
once in a year.
yeah,
It's like you keep digging those holes, and what's gonna happen is you're gonna. I would rather have a guy like you that's gonna be like, I'm gonna do just enough. Again, we're talking about like minimal effective dose here. I'm gonna do just enough and appropriately challenge myself every day or a couple days a week for 6 months and be healthy and enjoy what I'm doing and know I have more to give and know that I'm getting better. I'll take you over the guy who wants to shell himself once a week, like that weekend warrior mentality, where they miss every session during the week and then they wonder why, they don't have any energy to do it next week. It's because they absolutely demolish themselves on Saturday, Sunday, and you wonder how that's the person to get better. Like if you're the boss and you got a sales team and you have a guy that consistently converts 9 out of 10 customers 5 days a week for the whole year. And then you got a guy who basically bonks 4 days out of the week, but every so often he'll go like 13, he'll go 3 over the 10 you wanted. I'll take the guy that's consistent, thank you. That has proven they can do it time in and time out. And again, as a coach, when you look at the times you get closer to racing, you look to the athletes who have shown you the ability to adhere, not the training to control them, but what they've shown you again is not total compliance. What they've shown you is control, in the belief that controlling your emotions, which could be a whole another topic for a whole another podcast, is they've shown their ability to control their emotions. That oftentimes is what dictates the control of their effort, which is in other words is what also dictates the control of their performance. And they know that they have to control that and learn how to execute things in training before they execute them on race day. So they can't just be random all the time and go really, really easy when you ask them to go hard, and they can't go way too hard when you ask them easy, because then you're chaotic. You can't predict anything, and you can't perform well when all you're doing is being chaotic, and you're just basically picking and choosing when you want to do things. There's no pattern, there's no progression, there's no nothing. And that's why you have to establish control. But people, again, who are really, really insecure or have their insecurities manifest themselves in triathlon training, they will always go over. More oftentimes than not, they'll always want to do more because they have to do more because they're insecure. And again, that's not always, that's actually rarely has to do anything with triathlon. It's more of just about how they've become who they are based on the many different things they've gone through in life. They were that person before they came to triathlon. And so they added something into their life in hopes that it would help remove it or help alleviate it or help deal with it. But now all it's done is add additional opportunities and pathways for them to express their insecurities and actually make it worse. And again, like I just think it's a very delicate balance for people, coming from a person like myself who's gone through major periods of anxiety and depression, to want to add something in, but then not become totally obsessed with it and have it just actually, instead of simmering down and alleviating those depressed and anxiety feelings, but actually now what you've done, if you aren't doing it in a healthy way, is what it's doing now is just adding fuel to the fire. You're just giving something so much more passion that it's heading in the wrong direction. And as the more people I come across, the more people I talk to, the more people that reach out to us via email, that so many people do struggle with depression and anxiety and have gravitated to this sport to help alleviate that, and the structure and the feelings that they get when they get in working out, that it's good for them, it's good for their soul, it's good for their heart, it's good for their mind, it's good for their body, that when they find themselves losing that way and it becoming a more stressful thing, then we've really lost our way. And it's time to rein yourself back in. So if you're one of those people who got into the sport to find the good in yourself, to maximize that, to remove some of these thoughts or feelings or your insecurities, and be who you are, it's like you still got time. Like the endurance sports is like one of the greatest things and one of the greatest ways, a healthy way, to figure out who you are. And I think one of the most exciting parts about that is that you don't know. You have no idea who you can become, but you will have a pretty decent idea of who you're going to end up being if you force yourself in a direction. And obviously there are certain principles and characteristics, and you want to keep your moral compass in a certain direction, but generally I think that's one of the most exciting things, is not knowing. And I think again that is why you see people have all these emotions and that they are the most motivated. I think we had a podcast about this, when people have the sophomore slump with Ironman, is because their very first time to go around, they take nothing for granted. Nothing. They have they're not stressed about it, but they have this very healthy fear of the unknown. And it's not fear in a bad way. It's like, dude, I don't know. How am I going to even, like, I can't even wrap my brain around running 26 miles after biking 112. How the hell am I supposed to swim 2.4 if I can't even swim 1,000 right now? And then I have to do it. It's like there's this healthy, I think it's more of a healthy respect and appreciation with the event and the obstacle for most people that they've chosen to overcome, that they just wake up every day and think, all right, I'm going to do the best that I can to do that. And then after they've done it, if they run down the red carpet, if they finish, they have this feeling, I did it. See, I can do it. Okay, now how can I be better? And I've got to do this. Like, you see people change. And I'm not saying it happens every time, but it happens for a lot. It's like you don't get confident, but you now turn the unknown into wanting to know. Well, I got to go sub 12 next year. Now what do I got to do to go sub 12? Like, you could be sub 11. You never know. But I think there's a healthy thing behind not knowing and appreciating that, and just wake up every day and doing the best you can, and then having the ability, even though I'm saying it's not easy, to just not know and just do your best and just see where you end up on race day. We've become so obsessed with the illusion of analyzing and data that we think we should be able to predict everything. And if you've woken up today and you've lived another day on this world, then you know one thing for certain, and that life is insanely unpredictable. And if you think that you can predict training, or where you're going to be in 3 months, or where you're going to be in 2 weeks, or what you're even capable of, then you got some more searching to do.
Mm. Yeah, unpredictable, impermanent. Uh, do what you do today, because it's the little things add up over time, right? And
Hmm.
it's not glamorous. And I think it's okay. I mean, well, it is okay to feel good and energized after workouts too, right? It's like, what's the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them.
Do unto you. Yeah, look at you
Yeah.
spitting out some Bible verses.
But I heard an interesting twist on it the other day. Somebody said the reverse of that is do unto yourself as you would do unto others. And I think that's an interesting angle, because a lot of times we might have more grace for someone else in training, but feel like we have to push ourselves harder.
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with treating yourself with grace in training, and feeling good after workouts more often than not, and looking forward to the next one, because to me, that is the whole key to training for triathlon, is figuring out a way to be excited about the next workout. Be in that moment today and get done and be ready and anxious to get back at it. I mean, that's probably a good way to live too.
It's a great way to live.
Um,
It's a great way to end our podcast.
all right, let's do it. I want to. Can I? I have a little announcement.
Whoa!
It's,
Go.
no,
Did
it's
you get?
very
Did you
little,
get?
very little.
Did you get a new plant or something? I don't know about.
Still on CBD oil. No, I'm kidding. Um,
God. Yeah, here comes the
what
man.
was I going to say now?
Here come the sponsor requests.
Okay, so our new website is C26Triathlon.com. That is all about our community and our coaching. And if you want to learn more about us and everything like that, the old website was at crushingiron.com, and we've decided to continue that on as a blog. Okay, I didn't really tell you that yet, but
Man, I'm like on the edge of my seat over here.
so that will be like a posting plate, because it's there, and it'll kind of have stuff about the podcast, and who knows what'll show up on the blog. But I wanted to keep a blog going because I think that kind of fuels a lot of good discussion and ideas for us and things like that. And then on the C26 Triathlon will be coaching, and of course we have the online hub, which is available to our athletes, which is a resource with hundreds of videos and all kinds of coaching articles and things of that nature. So that comes with coaching programs, and I may be introducing one of my own here in the next few days.
Breaking news, folks. Heard it here first.
Mm-hmm.
Man,
So,
it's like the NFL guy getting interviewed and figuring out he got traded before he actually gets told.
oh, I know. That was big.
Who you got in the Super Bowl?
I think the 49ers, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna root for them too.
I think I'm going for defense here.
I'm not anti-Chiefs, but man, like living there for like 2 years, those fans, it's their year every year. My goodness. And Hayden, for whatever reason, became like infatuated with the 49ers when we watched part of the game. He like was all about we played football every night that he's gotten home this week from school.
Oh, really? They got
Um,
cool helmets.
yeah, well, it's funny. Like people with kids can appreciate this. Is he was like, yeah, I like the 49ers. I do not like the Tenors.
The Tenors.
I was like, yeah, buddy, we don't like the Tenors. We just like the Niners. He was like, yeah, we don't like the Tenors. I was like, that's right, man. We don't like the Tenors. No, I like the 49ers coach. I like watching their fun and fast defense. I wouldn't listen. I don't really care. I just hope it's a good game. I think it will be defense against offense. And I honestly wouldn't mind seeing Andy Reid win a Super Bowl. I mean, the guy's been in the league for forever and done a lot of great things and had a lot of great seasons. So I wouldn't hate seeing him win a Super Bowl either.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't care. Is it this weekend or is
No,
it
it's
next
next
weekend?
weekend. Yeah, we got a
Okay.
weekend. Yeah, the weekend before run camp.
Okay. Um,
So we got a whole another week to dive into Super Bowl stuff.
yeah,
That's it.
right.
I know.
That Hernandez thing, though, you've watched that, huh? I
I
watched
did,
it.
man. I don't
I
want to go
watched it.
too. I don't want to go too. I'm only on like episode 3, I think. I don't want to go too off the rails, but it's just, yeah, it makes me sad, man.
It's bonkers, man.
It makes me sad, and it reminds me. And I almost
I
went there
mean,
on the podcast today, but it just reminds me even more so the impact that each and every person on this planet has on one another, and
mm-hmm.
that we can choose to be of positive impact on those around us and be inclusive and be loving and be kind and be thoughtful and be serious when we need to be and hold people accountable. But it just really reminds me of how each of us have a responsibility to understand the impact we have on people, and that we can choose to be just really shitty people, and that's going to affect other people in a shitty way, and that you never know the size of the impact you could have on somebody and what that can mean to them and what your gesture can mean and how you acknowledge them and talk to them or raise them, or it's just you never know. And I think it's something that probably isn't the most fun thing to think about because it might feel like a lot of pressure. But yeah, it reminds me. It reminds me. I think the whole thing is super sad. But it does. It's just like every time I watch an episode, I just keep thinking like of the tremendous impact that we all have on each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. It's a delicate balance. Choose your words carefully and actions.
Yep. Amen, man. But hey, if you have any thoughts or other actions you want to email us, you can email Mike crushing@gmail.com. And if you want to email me directly, C26coach@gmail.com. We appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you listening, being a part of our community, and we will see you again on Monday.
All right, man. Thanks a lot, buddy.
See you, dude.